Here's what you didn't know about Black burlesque history.
Legendary entertainer, activist, spy, and mother. Today we are discussing Frida Josephine Baker, born Josephine McDonald on June 3, 1906 in St. Louis, Missouri. Her ancestry is unknown, although her parents were said to be former slaves of African and Native American descent. There are rumors her father was white, since her mother did work for a German family at the time. Josephine spent her early life in a racially mixed, low-income area of St. Louis. She lived a life of poverty. A slum child, sleeping in cardboard shelters, scavenging for food in garbage cans. She soon started making a living with street corner dancing. At age 12, she dropped out of school and started working as a waitress at the Old Chauffeurs Club. It was here that Josephine met Willie Wells, who she married at age 13, but the marriage lasted barely a year. After her divorce from her first husband, she found work with a street performance group called the Jones Family Band. Her mother did not approve of her being an entertainer. She soon married her second husband, William Howard Baker, in 1921 at age 15. She left him when her vaudeville troupe booked New York City venues. They divorced in 1925, but she did keep his last name as her professional stage name. She was performing at the Plantation Club, and after several auditions, she secured her role in the chorus line of a touring production, the hugely successful Broadway revue, Shuffle Along. In Shuffle Along, Baker danced at the end of a chorus line. Fearing she was being overshadowed, she added a hint of comedy into her routine, making her stand out. Baker was always on the road, sending gifts and money for her mother and her younger half-sister. At the age of 19, Baker sailed to Paris. She starred in La Revue Nègre at Théâtre des Champs-Élysées. Please excuse my French. She was quoted to say, "I just couldn't stand America, and I was one of the first colored Americans to move to Paris." In Paris, she was an instant success for her erotic dancing and for appearing schmood on stage. After a successful tour of Europe, she broke her contract and returned to France in 1926 to star at the Folies Bergère. Baker performed the Danse Sauvage, wearing little more than a skirt of strung-together artificial bananas. Non-Western art forms, specifically of African origin, were celebrated by Europeans and became very popular because of her. Later shows in Paris, she was often accompanied on stage by her pet cheetah, Chiquita, donning a diamond collar. Chiquita would escape into the orchestra pit, terrorizing the musicians, which only added more excitement to the show. Baker became the most successful burlesque entertainer in France, American that is. She was known as the most sensational woman anyone ever saw. Even Picasso painted her and depicted her alluring beauty, saying she had legs of paradise. Baker had many endorsements, like Baker Fix hair gel, as well as bananas, shoes, and cosmetics, among other products. She was making a lot of money then. At the start of her career in France, Abatino, a Sicilian who posed as a count, persuaded her to let him manage her. He became not only that, but her lover. But they could not marry because she was still wed to Willie Baker legally. Baker released her most successful song, J'ai deux amours. The song expressed, "I have two loves, my country and Paris." It was rumored that Josephine Baker was bisexual and had several relationships with women. Speculation exists that Baker had notable sexual relationships, like blues singers Clara Smith, Ada Bricktop Smith, French novelist Colette, and Frida Kahlo. She starred in 4 films, which found success only in Europe: the silent film Siren of the Tropics, Zuzu, and Princess Tam Tam. She also starred in False Alert in 1940. Under the management of Abatino, Baker's stage, public persona, and singing voice were transformed. In 1934, she took the lead in a revival of Jacques Offenbach's opera La Creole. She took months of training with a vocal coach, and have said she went from a petite danseuse sauvage with a decent voice to la grande diva magnifique. She was a triple threat, singing, dancing, and acting. But Baker never attained the equivalent reputation in America. Her star in the 1936 Ziegfeld Follies was unsuccessful. She was replaced by Gypsy Rose Lee. Time magazine referred to her as a Negro wench, whose dancing and singing might be topped anywhere outside of Paris. Other critics said her voice was too thin and dwarf-like to fill the Winter Garden Theater. She returned to Europe heartbroken and became a legal citizen of France, giving up her American citizenship. After returning to Paris in 1937, she married the French industrialist Jean Lion and became a French citizen. They were married in the French town of Crèvecoeur-le-Grand in a wedding presided over by the mayor, Jamie Schmidt. In September 1939, France declared war on Germany. Baker was recruited by the Deuxième Bureau, the French military intelligence agency, as an honorable correspondent. She socialized with the Germans and rubbed shoulders with high-ranking Japanese officials to Italian bureaucrats at embassies, ministries, nightclubs, charming them while secretly gathering information. Notes were written in invincible ink on Baker's sheet music. She penned notes with the information she gathered inside her underwear, counting on her celebrity to avoid a strip search. After the war, Baker was awarded many medals like the Resistance Medal and was also named the Chevalier of the Légion d'Honneur. During this time, she had many miscarriages and developed an infection that required a hysterectomy. During the Civil Rights Movement, Baker began to adopt children, forming a family which she often referred to as the Rainbow Tribe. Baker wanted to prove that children of different ethnicities and religions could still be brothers. Baker's last marriage to French composer and conductor Joe Bouillon ended around the time she adopted her 11th child. In 1951, Baker was invited back to the United States. After winning a public battle over desegregating a club's audience, Baker followed up her sold-out run at the club with a national tour. Rave reviews accompanied her everywhere, climaxed by a parade in Harlem in honor of her new title, NAACP's Woman of the Year. Baker spoke out about many injustices during the Civil Rights. She arrived in New York with her husband Joe, and they were refused reservations at 36 hotels because of racial discrimination. She refused to perform for segregated audiences in the United States. She was offered $10,000 by a Miami club, and the club eventually met her demands. Her insistence on mixed audience helped to integrate live entertainment shows in the Las Vegas Valley. After an incident at the Stork Club in October 1951, Baker was criticized and was accused of being a communist, forcing her to cancel all of her shows and return to France. It was almost a decade before U.S. officials allowed her back into the country. She was quoted to say, "I have walked into the palaces of kings and queens, into the houses of presidents and much more, but I could not walk into a hotel in America and get a cup of coffee, and that made me mad. And when I get mad, you know that I open my big mouth, and then look out, 'cause when Josephine opens her mouth, they hear it all over the world." In her later career and age, Baker faced financial troubles. She commented, "Nobody wants me, they've forgotten me," but family members encouraged her to continue performing. In 1973, she performed at Carnegie Hall to a standing ovation. The following year, she performed and was celebrating 50 years in French show business. Advancing years and exhaustion began to take their toll. She sometimes had trouble remembering lyrics, and her speeches between songs tended to ramble, but she still captivated audiences of all ages. Her reputation as a crusader grew, and the NAACP made Sunday, May 20th, 1951, Josephine Baker Day. She was presented with life membership with the NAACP by the Nobel Peace Prize. On April 8, 1975, Baker starred in a retrospective revue at the Bobino in Paris, Josephine à Bobino 1975, celebrating her 50 years in show business. The revue was financed by Prince Rainier, Princess Grace, and Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis. It opened to rave reviews. Demand for seating was such that fold-out chairs had to be added to accommodate spectators. The opening night audience included Sophia Loren, Mick Jagger, Shirley Bassey, Diana Ross, and Liza Minnelli. 4 days later, Baker was found lying peacefully in her bed, surrounded by newspapers with glowing reviews of her performance. She was in a coma after suffering a cerebral hemorrhage. Josephine Baker passed age 68 on April 12, 1975. Josephine Baker left a lasting legacy that continues to inspire and influence generations centuries after her birth.
Ta voyage me trouva à l'étranger. Quand monsieur en son langage, gentiment un jour m'a demandé: allez-moi donc la ville lumière, Paris est vraiment si joli, qu'on le dit unique sur la terre. Simplement, j'ai répondu.
Write in the comments which burlesque shake dancer you would like me to cover next. Let's always remember to give those who came before us their flowers.